Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shilanski in an episode of Worlds to Conquer. And today I've got a very, very special episode for you because I have here with me the man, the myth, the legend, Floyd Shilanski. And for those of you that haven't met us in person and don't know that I am the spitting image of Floyd with a little less facial hair, he is my father. Him and my mom, Rosa Shilanski, started our registered investment advisory firm back in 1981, Shilanski and Associates. And today we are going to get super, super uncomfortable with one another and kind of give you conflicting opinions, as many of you have in this industry. If you are in a multi-generational practice, either you are the heir apparent, or maybe you're working with other advisors who have a father, son, father, daughter, mom, daughter, whatever the relationship, family relationship is, you know how complicated family offices can be. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to my absolute favorite man in the entire world, my dad.
Thanks, Jay. You know, I don't have favorites, so I can't say you're my favorite dog. Well,
I've seen your estate planning documents. I'm the favorite.
Shush, it's interesting. You talk about family businesses and working to transfer family businesses. I wonder how many people in here know someone that has gone to work for another firm where an older, I'll call them founders, if you will, brought a younger person in to say, hey, work with me, learn my business, and I will transfer my business to you.
Which never happens.
Exactly right.
Which never happens.
Exactly right. And then Mike and I were at a conference, I don't think you were at it, a few years ago, and they had a gal drawing on a whiteboard as everyone was talking. And what was interesting, there was a cartoon. Dad, are you ever going to retire? And the practice says, of course I am. And then he looks at the clients that your dad's servicing, and he says, Dad, when? They're all dead, then do I inherit the business? Mm-hmm. So hopefully in a multi-generation practice, if you will, that's not the case. There's conversation, good or bad, that talks about that transition and how it will take place. So Jamie, before you hit me with questions I'm not ready for, what's the best thing about a family business?
That it's family.
And what's the worst thing about a family?
That it's family.
Because we never get away from it, right?
Right. There's no escape. There's no time off. In fact, if you grow up in this business, any one of the grandkids will tell you that when we're all together, well, first of all, like a couple of things there, right? We don't set good boundaries. When me, you, and Micah are together, it is nonstop business shop top. Right. And that's not because we're identifying problems. That's not because we're putting out emergencies, et cetera. It's because we really, really like what we do. And so when you have that collective energy of the three of us together, my goodness, it's lightning in a bottle. It is hard to contain.
Jamie, it's not like, it's love. I love what I do. Mm-hmm. How many times, and we're in the middle of just getting started with search, not in the middle, and how many times this last week that I had legacy clients look at me and say, Floyd, when are you going to retire?
Sure.
All right. And they look at Jamie and says, well, we're in good hands because we've got Jamie.
But let's talk about that right now, right? Because so when I got my securities license and started, at that time we were at a broker dealer. We hadn't totally broken away and had any kind of blended practice. But when I got my securities license, we started down, one of the things, so we did it, the way that we did it in our firm was we had gotten really big in the 1990s, really, really big.
Body shop.
It was a body shop. And we surrounded ourselves with all of the wrong people. I mean, and that was our fault, right? That was our fault because we set the tone. And I remember very well, we used to have thermostats in the back of the office with everyone's sales goals, and whether or not they were producing enough and, whether or not they were earning these trips to go on all these, awards and things like that. And it was not the business model we liked. It was the business model of the industry at the time, right? But it wasn't what we liked. We didn't like having to, quote unquote, sell. You weren't helping people.
Well, we filled the bus with people. but we had no one in the right seats on the bus.
Right.
And the bus vacated.
Yeah. And it just came crashing down on us, right? And we call that period of our life, you call it the dark years.
Yeah.
And I call it trimming the fat. Right? We had the wrong people. We had the wrong energy. We were making the wrong type of impact. We felt. So we really had that time where we built this, you and Mom built this incredible empire as Mike and I were coming of age. And then it kind of retracted, right? Like a rubber band. I mean, retracted, and we got real small, trimmed the fat. And then we got really protective.
We thought it was a Titanic. I'd come out of business meetings and asked your mom, are we treading water, or water still coming over the gunnels? As we
Yeah. So as we came of age, Micah got his license first. He was one of the first CFPs, the youngest CFPs, that went through Jeff Ratner's class. Amazing instructor. I went through the same program myself. And I recommend it to anyone out there looking to become a CFP. Ratner puts on a showstopper. I mean, just osmosis with education on the financial side. And when he got his ticket punched, we kind of had to make some internal decisions about who was going to run the company and who was going to go get more clients. And one of the things, and we'll really unpack this here, is there was nothing handed to us kids. We fought and earned every single dollar that we make today. And when Micah was coming of age and got his CFP done, you told him, I want you to the brink of starving, because the brink of starving will make sure you're hungry. You'll get a fire in your belly, and you'll do something about going and getting your own clients.
Fire in the belly is the answer, because if someone doesn't have the fire in the belly and they're handed to practice and they're just looking to take over someone else's book, there's no fire. There's no reason to get excited. There's no reason to go one step more, one more call, that one more knock on the door, that one more something to make it happen for you. So you're 100% correct.
So Micah builds us, we start bringing on clients. I start doing the back end of things, writing the articles, getting the content, doing all the niche stuff so that we have this funnel. And Micah and I create this incredible marketing funnel for federal employees. And then as we're going along, Micah's book of business gets so big that he cannot be the heir apparent, right? I mean, he can't take over Dad's practice. So comes up and says, okay, Jamie, you got to step up. You've got to be the one to take over the clients, because something happens to Dad. We're going to have, at that time we had 215 households that would not have had another financial advisor. Because remember, when we had gotten so big, then we let everyone go and contracted, really got back to our values, why we wanted to be in this business, how we wanted to deliver massive value, design a lifestyle practice, and be profitable. And then it became, okay, you've got to step up and start meeting with these clients. And I remember it was, over a decade ago, and said, okay, well, where's the end point? Where's the transition, right? And you're
in the deep end.
And this is, I want to talk about this because a lot of advisors that are listening that maybe are in that quote unquote inheriting a practice, that was 10 years ago. And we, at that time, you said by age 70, I'm going to move to chairman emeritus and no longer meet with clients, right? And so if theoretically that entire book of business should have transferred over to me, right?
Your recall of that and mine is a little different. I did say chairman emeritus. I never said I wasn't going to meet with clients.
Okay.
I think you guys are trying to move me out.
No. And actually quite the opposite. I don't begrudge Dad staying in the business at all, but you're unique in that, right? I am unique in that. You have a unique situation with me because I don't want you to retire. I don't want you to stop meeting with clients. I dread the day, not that I can't fly solo, but that I'm never with you again meeting with clients. I never want that to happen, Dad.
It makes my heart go pitter-patter, sweetheart. But, the thing about it, though, is that we talk about practices. And I won't say that we were a disruptor when we started our practice, but we were a disruptor so many, 40-plus years ago. And then for so many years, it was work hard, save money. My generation, right, is to work hard, save money, and, retire. And then 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I tried to get our clients to eradicate that R word from their dictionary. Because when you say retire to me, it's plaid pants up to your chest with suspenders in Florida with shuffleboards. No offense to anybody in Florida.
You're not a far cry from that today. You're in jeans and a plaid t-shirt talking to me now.
Well, you told me I didn't have to get dressed up for the podcast.
With a camo hat that says you can land anywhere once.
I wanted to go flying today, but you had me come do this.
So hold on a second, because I think you're digressing from the topic, is that you have a lot of advisors out there, I'm going to call them the heir apparent, right? That step in and say, all right, mom, dad, senior advisor, whoever this is going to transition, and I'm going to essentially be their junior, right? Which is a word we hate because it doesn't set anyone up for success, right? It's like using the word staff. If you have staff, don't expect their loyalty, right? They're going to have a job. They're going to punch in and punch out. If you have team, they're going to go above and beyond. And if you have another advisor who has an area of expertise and is willing to step up, how would you structure that transition? Because like I said, you're lucky because you have me. If you had another quote unquote junior in that capacity, they wouldn't be happy, right? Because there's the limitation of one, my own career growth, right? Which I don't find any limitation. I go find other ways, right? But then two, there's that commission side of things, right? There's that revenue side of things. Because in order for me to have 100% of that book, that means yours is down to zero. So what would you recommend for advisors listening that are entertaining the idea of taking on a senior's book or in the position right now where they're working and they don't see the end in sight of when they can become that own solo advisor?
I think a couple of things with that, all right? My mind's ping-ponging back as you ask that question. I think the first thing they have to look at is for the senior advisor, the elder, whatever you want to call us, in making this transition, we need to really understand what it means to them. Not just the fact that, hey, you're going to start meeting with clients, but what truly does it mean? And how many times do you see retirees that once they stop doing what they're doing, their life expectancy shrinks dramatically because their life is around that, all right? And if you have an advisor that their life is not around the business, I wonder how solid the business is. And it may be great, all right? You and I know as we look at businesses that are, quote, for sale, they're annuity businesses. They're commission driven, so they're going to sell it just right after they flip their book, got all the commissions. You got 8 years to wait before we can even do anything with it. So I think understanding that. So a junior talking to someone they're going to buy out needs to just really sit down and say, what does retirement look like for you? What do you anticipate this to be? And I'm going to use the word vision board because we've been talking about it all week with our clients. Sit down and that the junior, if you will, buying a practice needs a vision board of what he sees. And then I think that the founder or the person transferring that needs a vision board that says, okay, what does this mean? I've been joking that I got a 5-year contract. I've been joking about that, kind of forever. And of course, your response is until the day I die, I got a contract. So.
Amen. I try to keep loading him up with debt. I'm like, doesn't mom need a brand new Mercedes?
$89,000. No, right. I mean, and that's a true statement to your listeners.
Yeah, we just said it yesterday. I picked Dad up during Surge, and we commute into town together to meet with clients, and I'm always harassing him on that, right? Like, how much more can we get him to spend to keep him motivated, keep that fire in his belly to keep hitting our goals? But a lot of advisors aren't in a situation where it's you and I, right? Where I'm never going to do anything to compromise your mom's income, right? Like, I don't want you to stop. Right, working because you still love what you do. So as long as you have capacity, I want you to keep doing it. But if it wasn't you and I, and it was somebody else, here's what I would tell them: if you are quote unquote the junior and you're going into a senior thing and you're looking at a transition, it has to have an end date in sight, and it cannot be arbitrary. And if you're a senior who loves meeting with clients, but could love doing a couple of other things too, and you want somebody to take over a lot of that, junior level work, then you need to create a pathway for success. And I would say that what that looks like in my mind is that they know how they can get their income up and what that transition timeline really, really looks like for everyone involved. That would be really imperative to me to see in a transition plan. Is one, when does it end? What does the junior need to show you? What does the senior need to see in order for that transition to happen successfully?
Jamie, I'll push back just a little bit because and you got to shift income.
The junior has to have a way to have their income go up.
Now you notice why my blood pressure continued to rise is because she always doesn't let me finish a thought. But inside of this, you have to ask how the practice is being run. Is it a commission-driven practice? All right. And we can always say it's commission, whether it's fee or AUM, we have to bring the revenue in. That is an idea, right?
Absolutely.
But from that structure there on, where does it go? Do we follow a doctor's type practice? Do we follow a CPA practice? Do we follow an attorney practice where you have you have to buy in, if you will. You want your name on the front door. If you're a legal firm or a CPA firm, it costs you money to do that. And then in that revenue, you also have to generate so much revenue on your own every year to get there.
Absolutely.
And then the ability to buy out that individual. That's always a possibility.
But that becomes a challenge, right? So, several years ago when you and I were looking at this, and I was like, it's the daughter in me, right? Like, I don't want to take your mom's income because you guys have worked really hard. You built an incredible company. Micah and I have the intellectual capacity that outpaces a lot of people when it comes to business development because of how you guys planted seeds with us over the years. But that being said, I don't want to be thwarted. I don't want to be throttled back because of that family love and obligation, right? And this became an area of contention a few years ago because I took it upon myself to find other ways of earning income that didn't impact you guys. And for a lot of financial advisors, this means they're like, okay, well, then I'm going to go get my own clientele. I'm going to build my own book of business. And when I sat down and started penciling my plan, my mountain map, right, of how I wanted to 4X my income, bringing on my own set of clients independent of our joint relationship didn't make sense because I'd end up in the exact same position that we were in when I started working with you, right? What happens to your book of business when something happens to you or you no longer want to do this? So then that becomes that terrible word, right? Moonlighting of hustling and finding other, things that you found were distracting.
Jamie, moonlighting can be a distraction. All right, and the tougher part is over the last 40 years, while financial planning has always been our platform that we move towards or we worked off of, many times we'd go off into counseling, we'd go off into training other areas and training other advisors that wasn't necessarily profitable for the firm. All right, so when the junior wants to branch out from that, that distraction can take away from the profitability of the firm. And a good leader has to be able to sit back and say, all right, I've done that before, or perhaps I've been there before. How do we change all of that? I think a bigger challenge becomes how is the firm structured? And in our case, being an S corporation with your mom and I own 100%, how do we break that down? When it comes to sharing revenue, is it percentage of ownership or is it a discretionary distribution?
And we got into this, right? So for those of you that don't listen to Retirement Tax Services podcast, you absolutely have to. Stephen Jarvis is my hands down favorite Jarvis. We always have great intellectual conversations. And he's the only CPA that I've ever talked to where all roads don't lead to S Corps. So anyone you talk to, they're always like, set it up as an S Corp, set it up as an S Corp. And there's a reason I'm not a big fan of S Corps unless you're a husband and wife who can move along harmoniously, which is how you and mom started, right? Like you guys started, therefore you created as an S Corp because it was you and mom as the owners.
Not only that, but 40 years ago, we didn't have limited liability companies. 40 years ago, we didn't have that structure. So I would take exception with any CPA that says this uniformly is wrong. You shouldn't do it. There's better options.
Right. And you know what the S stands for in S Corp, right? Do you know what it stands for?
Subchapter S of the IRS code.
No, shenanigans. Shenanigans.
C Corp partnerships all have shenanigans, okay?
And that's the reason I'm not a fan of an S Corp is because I am part of an S Corp. I am a shareholder. And this is one of those difficult conversations where you have this S Corp and so as a shareholder in an S Corp, we do pro rata distributions. So what we ran into as we built the company out was, here you are in this transition period of, gosh, I don't know what, 10, 12 years ago, Mike and I really started running the firm, where you and mom started.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, I think Lane's 21.
It very well could have been 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10, 12 years ago where, you and mom, and the transition was hard, right? It was really rocky. It was difficult.
And you're saying it's not today?
Well, we still have a lot of wounded energy today, right? I mean, there's a subject I won't even talk about because of how awful it was when we brought a coach in, and the coach sat down and after evaluating the leadership of the firm and hearing about our goals of where we wanted to go, ended up unbeknownst to any of us,
Amen.
right?
Surprise.
And we had no
Blindsided.
idea it was going this way.
Yeah.
But you had 5 leaders in the firm, and mom and dad were still running the company. And, it was, Dad, I think it was like 12 years ago. Yeah. And he, after he did all his evaluation, after he worked and trained with us for weeks, he came in front of the group and said, you need to move Jamie to CEO of the company. This is the only way you achieve your goals. And, it was total shock, but it created an incredibly difficult family ripple, right? Still today. So, and we didn't just go, oh, thank you, random coach, for saying Jamie should be CEO. We will absolutely transition you over. It wasn't like that. It was
WTF, what's
nasty.
going on? Yeah.
Right. And we all love each other and we normally work harmoniously, but this was a big blow. This was a big blow because
Emotional, ego.
mom and dad weren't ready for that, to hear that.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
And one of the things I love about my dad is like, we will sit here and Micah and I and the 3 of us can just like pound through an idea. And my dad will get so petulant and he will slam his hand on the table and say, I'm the president of the company and therefore it's going to be this way. And
I get up and walk out.
Or you get up and walk, you storm off, you walk out, you're upset, right?
Yeah.
And this was actually really hard for my spouse, who when mom and dad fought, or when mom and dad fought with the kids and people walked out, they didn't always come home. And they didn't always make good decisions when they were out, right? They made vengeful. And one of the beautiful things about our family is that everyone can get mad, everyone can yell and holler and walk out, but we're still having Sunday dinner together. We're still holding our hands and saying grace and thanking the Lord for the family and the fellowship that we have together. And nobody's staying mad indefinitely. We hammer through it. We're like, hey, you pissed me off. I'm really upset. You hurt my feelings, and we kind of go through that, and we have to continually go through that. I mean, Dad, this summer, you and I came to blows over a topic that I was really, really upset about how you did something with the company, and as you and I were walking through that, and you have the grace to come and apologize, and I said, I'm really upset. I'm very frustrated with you, but I love you. I'm not going to stop loving you. We're going to work through this and I'll clean it up and I'll figure it out. Right. And so
Come to terms with it, probably, was a better way to say it.
I don't have a choice. Well, I do have a choice, right? And the choice would be to dissolve the company, walk away, move away, right? I mean, that you always have a choice, right? But that's not a path I'm gonna go down because it wasn't that egregious, right? So how do you do with the wrestling of handing over the reins?
Every day when I journal, and those of you that know me, I've got a little brown book that's worse for wear right now because of a river trip.
I fell in the river.
Yeah, really. She calls it my Kwijak book. So anyway, I journal every day, and it's torn. What do you do? Do you stop? All right. I've got a lovely bride that this last year she's made traveling the foremost of what she wants to do, and she's making up for the COVID years.
Don't worry, Europe. We'll pull you out of single-handedly recessions.
I tell you. But in doing that, it's always, okay, I enjoy that, but what's next, if you will? Mm-hmm. Then I come back and a client calls and he's got what I call a 911 call. And then they got this problem, and this problem is insurmountable to them. As soon as they outline it, in the back of my mind goes, okay, this is a 35-second fix. It's not a big deal. And they let them go through it. They wring their hands, and then you walk them through it. And when you're done, they go, oh, my God, I never thought of it that way. And it's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Hugs and kisses, and we solved a problem. And I walk out smiling because I made a difference in their lives. And how many times did we hear this week in talking just with clients on the search?
Okay, so I know you're a phenomenal financial planner. Anyone listening knows you're a phenomenal financial planner. How do you deal with handing power over to your kids? Because it's running the company,
trying
right?
to get there with that story, right? It's like, when am I going to stop doing it? Probably when, they start shoveling dirt on however you're going to dispose of my unworldly remains. You just got to cut loose. You just got to say, okay, All right.
But do you do it in stages? Do you just say the reins are yours? You know,
it has to be in stages.
Okay.
So many children come up and say, well, it's one thing to see a company and say, man, if I was running it, I'd do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I was running it this way. But at the end of the day, if the money's short because you made wrong decisions, who's going to write that check?
Oh, yes, the founder, right? They've got the deepest pocketbooks.
That's right. Regardless if they say I'm running or not running.
100%.
Right? The nice part about the family, when you have good family connections, is you don't anticipate the family hurting you. You don't anticipate the family doing something that is going to take away from the revenue.
That's not always true.
I won't say
that is not always true, right? And so even with the handling of the firm, right? And this is a hand-to-God true story. So as I mentioned, I pick my dad up every day for work during surge, and so we commute back and forth to Anchorage. And we were driving down the road. We're going over the tax projections, our goals, hammer things through on the business planning side, right? So not meeting with clients, on the businesses. And, I'm hammering Dad on creating this tax bucket strategy and why we don't do this. And he's getting so worked up. He's getting so frustrated with me because we're just in a circle, right? He says one thing and we circle back. And he picks up the checkbook and he throws it on my dash as we're going down Fifth Avenue by Merrill Field in Anchorage, Alaska. And he says, if you're so stinking smart, fine. You run the finances of the company. I'm over it. I'm done. And of course, in genuine Shilanski fashion, I instantly call Micah and I say, hey, guess what? Congratulations. We're now running the finances of the company. Dad's done. And we were able to laugh and to joke.
There's a bunch of truth to that, but not that's the same story. But there is a bunch of truth to that.
But even then, right, when you were like, fine, you're going to handle the accounting, you're going to run the firm, you're going to be responsible for this, to a point. Right? Because if you still want to call and make changes to how I'm doing something, our team that has been with us 20 or 30 years, they're going to listen to you. And they just make those changes and I get to know about it afterwards.
Sometimes that's true.
At least once a year, that's true. So
that's better than once a month or once a week.
Dad. Don't you start once a month or once a week. But where does that live? Like how do you, so if I was outside and I work with a lot of businesses and I would go to AORs, right? I'd say, hey, these are your areas of responsibility. This is who's in charge of X, Y, and Z. Anyone else that wants to come in and make a decision has to have a meeting with the person that's in charge of that AOR. So structurally, for people that are unrelated in businesses, you could set this up, right? Like you could say, hey, no, you run the books of the company. You're responsible for marketing. You're responsible for compliance. You're responsible for X, Y, and Z. But how do you do that when it's this, right?
Well, the other thing you've got to remember is you have to keep harmony, all right? So frustrations are always going to be there.
Oh my God, that's so funny because my dad is the least likely to create harmony.
Come on. I'm the first one to apologize.
You're the disruptor.
Well, I won't dispute that, all right? But I am the first one.
You're normally apologizing because you did something.
Yeah, but I've got the backbone to say maybe I should have done it a different way.
And that is a beautiful part of you is that you'll get petulant, you'll pound your hand on the table, you'll get frustrated and leave, but then you'll always come back and say, all right, let's work through this.
You use these $15 words. That's because we paid for your education.
Did you pay for my education? Because I feel like I cut a lot of checks.
You did after we gave you the money for the firm. That was tax planning.
Now let's go.
That was tax planning.
Let's talk about that. Gave me money for the firm. So let's do this.
From the firm.
No. Let's go through it. All right. So you asked me when we started this.
I think this is a therapy session for you.
What? No, this is
really
not therapeutic. If it was, it wouldn't be 10 a.m. and we'd be pouring scotch or whiskey. All right. So
but
listen.
You took my glass away from me.
Yes, I did. So here's the deal, right? You asked me when we began, what's the best thing and what's the worst thing, right? And one of the things that's really difficult, and this is going to sound like I'm just like a whiny brat when I say this, right? But unless you are the son or daughter of an owner of a company that you work for, you will not relate to this at all. But if you are, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Whenever anyone asks you what you do for a living, regardless of your age, they will tell you, oh, you work for your dad. Oh, you work for your mom.
I hate that every time you say that.
Dad, it happened to us 6 weeks ago with your friends. When we went to a business dinner, we introduced, they said, oh yeah, this is Jamie. She works for her dad.
I have no recollection of that conversation.
I'm sure you don't, Senator. So, and so, it became one of these things where it was really hard to say what you did, because the second you did, somebody felt you got handed a silver spoon. You got handed something, right? And that's, this is a difficult part, because when you say, I have a family firm and my kids work for me, it is an area of like pride.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
It is ownership. It is, look what I have created, and I brought my family into this, and it's multi-generational. And when I say, we have a family firm, somebody always goes, oh, you work for your parents. And this is regardless of age, right? And a second they think that we work for our parents, everything that we have had to fight for has been handed to us in their mind.
We've said multi-generational multi-times today. And one of the things, if you're a founder, is knowing what that really means to you. All right. So when we first started, I'm going to recycle just a little bit. When we first started the firm, it was survival. That's the best to say. I just left the military trying to figure out what I'm going to do, but it worked out. All right. And then as we grew and we disrupted our industry and the local economy, charging fees back in the late 70s, early 80s, as well as the commissions. This was long before AUM. It was selling front-end loaded mutual funds, if you will. All right, when we did all of that, the thought process comes multi-generational. My wife and I wanted to build a firm that would generate revenue for us, take care of our kids as they went through university, all right? And then when they got married, the envision was kids and grandkids, God love it, if we could have great grandkids, come into the industry. And that was the whole thought process when we did that. And then to accomplish that, in the life insurance industry, it was all based around family. So from early ages, Jamie can remember, she was going to $1 million roundtable meetings and sitting outside the conference room listening to motivational and inspirational speakers. And that continued on even through the time that we were with the broker-dealer until we separated.
And I hated it. So all you parents out there that are listening, if you're wondering what is the one thing I could do to teach my kid about business, regardless of whether or not you are the daughter or son of somebody in an industry, or if you're the one, right? You're the change. You are the one in your family that started something. You are the entrepreneur. Immerse your kids in motivational conversations, and they will hate it. They will go kicking and screaming. My dad, he worked tirelessly through all of my adolescence, and he wasn't home normally till 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. And sometimes he would be able to slip away in the middle of the day if a client canceled to come see a game or, a match or anything. But he was working. Like, that's what I remember, is you were working and you were there for us. But we were there at the office, right? Like, we were dusting heater vents. We were doing
Trashing
mailers.
the office.
Yeah, we would, do the trash. We were the janitorial service. On Saturday, Sundays, like, that's what we would do after church. You go back to the office. And I don't begrudge that. Like, it was good. We didn't know any different. So if any of you guys have head trash about bringing your kids in, don't. It was awesome for us. And it was great for us to learn time and place of when we were allowed to talk, when we weren't, what questions were appropriate to ask, what wasn't, But in high school, my dad would always drive me to school, and I thought this was incredible. Like, we always caught the bus when we were younger, but every morning, because our school started at 7:15 a.m. for high school, super early. Yeah. So my dad would drive me in the minivan, and on cassette tape, he would have Les Brown playing motivational tapes, his motivational tape. Les Brown's phenomenal. If you haven't listened to him, I still love him. He's great. He talks about, when is the game over? It's over when I win, right? But as a 15-year-old high schooler, I did not like it, and I did not appreciate it. And I was like, gosh, Dad, why do we have to listen to this? Why can't we listen to music? Whatever it was, the Spice Girls or whatever it was at the time.
So now when we commute, we're listening to podcasts in her car on her radio.
Yeah, nonstop, right? And Dad's like, hey, why can't we play the Beatles or something,
Music, yeah. Some Beach Boys.
Yeah. And I would say that was a huge win, right? Because you constantly, through osmosis, surrounded us with positive energy and people that were thinking different ways than we thought. And so you really conditioned, all of us kids and the grandkids, that there's not just one concrete way of thinking. What if somebody else is right? What if a different way works? if everyone is looking to the right, what is going on the left?
And that's in our world today. That is so apropos, because our conservatives only listen to right, our liberals only listen to left. And I tell people all the time that we need to listen to both sides, and we need to find that place in the middle. Same way with transitioning a family practice. It's the founders' way, in their minds, maybe the 100% accurate way to do it, but the heir apparents have a different position. And somewhere you have to find what is right for everybody in that transitional period of time.
Yeah, and it is power struggle. And I would say that, two big things right now, as we kind of mentioned, like, how do you set up your company? I wouldn't set it up as an S Corp. I would do a partnership. That's my opinion, because you don't have pro rata distribution, so you don't do the shenanigans as much. And if somebody does want shenanigans, go do it in your own partnership account, right? And then if you have somebody that is putting more energy in than the other shareholders, then they get some type of shareholder agreement that pays them for what they're doing. You got to have a transition plan with your junior, with a deadline and time, and they also have to see how their income increases, so you don't have people walk away and say, I'm never going to be able to take over this book, right? I'm never going to be able to be in charge. And then what is that handoff of power, right?
Probably another podcast to have.
Probably a whole workshop, right?
Probably another podcast to do.
Yeah. And actually, that's a great question. How many of you listeners out there that are in similar practices like Shilanski and Associates, or thinking of entering into practices or building a practice like this, that want more information on that? If you think there's some little nugget of information in here, we would love to chat with you. Gosh knows we've gone through the gauntlet of pros and cons of whether or not you should hire family. Micah and I have a much different opinion than my dad. And we always say never hire family. In fact, my own son, when he got into finances, I told him to go find a different place to be employed with. And we'll talk to Lane a little bit about that in later episodes, and why that was so important to me. But Dad feels different. But we still
want Lane to come in the firm.
You still want him to come in the firm.
That's a true statement.
Yeah. And so speaking of that, you want everyone to come in the firm, regardless of skill or interest.
No, not everyone. There is one that I would not do.
Okay, you got one that you wouldn't do.
Maybe I got two that would.
Maybe, but and not just direct descendants, like anytime it's a cousin or aunt, uncle, or gosh, even this week you hit me with the husband of one of our our team members, and I was like, no.
That wasn't family though.
No, but you started it with, she takes such good care of us. She's, our team is really our family. Yeah. Oh, by the way, what is her husband doing? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Breaks.
But part of what the job is, always looking for that someone to fill.
So would you still stand by hiring family regardless of skill or interest?
That's a good question. My knee jerk first, of course, we'll find a way to make it work. Mm-hmm. That's the knee jerk. Because
my experience is you hire someone because they need a job, or maybe they have a little time, or maybe you have a need, right? And you think, I've got this family member that's not doing much, so I'm going to go ahead and bring them on here. But that ends up what happens. And that's one of the reasons that, Matt, Micah, and I are kind of cheeky about it when we tell you don't hire family, because you also might have to one day fire family. And if you can't fire them without causing a major family disruption, and it's not necessarily you letting them go, right? It's what is the ripple effect in that family. And, unfortunately, we've lost family members.
True statement.
Not through death, but through business divorce.
Yep.
Right? And never speak to them again, besides cordiality, and that's it. All right, guys, I think I bullied and pushed on Dad hard enough today, so we're going to bring in somebody else that he would love to talk to, and I hope you stay tuned for future episodes. As always, the Perfect RA is about actionable advice that you can take. I hope you really enjoy talking to my dad as much as I do. And do I beat him up on a regular basis? Hell yes I do. I want to keep him top of game. I'm good for his blood pressure, I tell him. He doesn't even need medication to get it up.
No, I need blood pressure to get it down.
Yes. So, actionable items, if you're in a transition period, or you're thinking of bringing a junior on, or if you're a junior trying to approach a senior, you got to have the hard conversation. I would not recommend hiring a business coach. I did not have success with that in our own personal family when you had an outsider come in and start calling shots because it's emotional. But you got to sit down and have a timeline. How does this adequately serve both people? If you have look at your entity agreements, right? If you have an S corp and you've got one person wanting to do more marketing and putting a lot more energy, but it's going to drive the revenue of the firm, but not directly impact the minority shareholder, could you do something with your shareholder agreements, right? Could you talk to an attorney and get things set up so that everything might not be equal, but it is fair? Could you look at restructuring? Could you flip to a partnership? Could you dissolve one entity and start another? There are a lot of different legal options and technical options that you could go through.
Don't just talk to an attorney. Make sure, especially if an S corporation, if you recapitalize
CPA.
it's a huge,
which is
tax
why
bite.
we didn't flip it.
Huge
right.
tax bite, right?
But you gotta put everything on the board, right? You gotta put it all up there, have it up for discussion, create a transition timeline. I would say big action item, areas of responsibility.
And if you're a founder, I think sitting down and doing your own vision board of what you want the end to look like, I think that's an important thing.
And the head trash.
Every day I got to take it out. But again, the founder has got to look at that. What does it really and truly mean? Are you going to transfer it? Are you going to help take care of the family? Or is it simply a money transaction?
Yeah.
And that's the tough one, because a lot of times when we're selling the book, it's a money transaction that creates the friction.
And you can call it greed. Most of the time I think it's ambition. Ego. There's a lot of emotion that goes into this, but it's got to be fair between both parties, and it has to have an end in sight.
That's
right?
Correct.
And if the senior's not going to retire, that has to be laid out right away. It can't be something that's dangling, over everyone's head.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say same. We also talked lightly about it. My recommendation is you don't hire family. My dad's recommendation is you have many kids as possible so that everyone can inherit the firm.
Well, you've heard me say this. If you've read my book, we were at a conference once and someone said, Floyd, if you didn't do this, what would you do? For those of you that don't know me, I'm a fourth generation young man from Texas. And in Texas, you grow up to have a farm or a ranch, cattle, horses, and so on. So if I hadn't done this, we'd have probably owned a ranch. And what did your brother come up and tell me right after that?
I have no idea, but I know I'm thankful not to be mucking stalls.
Well, what he says was, thank you, Dad, for not owning a ranch. So,
Yes.
Dreams.
Yeah, it is about dreams. And
it's about dreams. All right, Jamie. If anyone from the nation has questions or wants to hear more about a specific subject, as long as it doesn't create too much friction between Jamie and I'm sure that we can
I say let's do it. Even if it does create friction, let's unpack it. That's
difference between seniors and juniors and moms and dads and daughters and sons.
You want it to be quiet and go away, and I think the only way out is through. Right? Let's get through it.
As always, difference of opinions.
Yeah. I love you, big guy.
Love you too, sis.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect